We've seen Emily the Criminal. It's getting buzz, but how good is it? We'll also give some final thoughts on the Amazon Prime show, The English. That's all today on Taking It Down.
Alabama Take Projection.
Hello again. It is Taking It Down, a podcast where we cordially unpack film and TV for our progressive yet busy Alabama folks or beyond. I'm one of the few hosts, and I'm Blaine Duncan. Taking It Down exists because not only did I find myself missing the Vulture TV podcast, but I often find myself thinking about why I like what I like, why I did not like what I did not like when it comes to TV, movies, books, and music. My pedigree, do you need it? I've got an English degree. Is that cool? I'm a teacher. Is that okay? I spent a lot of time in college, like a lot. I was once your classic kid who grew up in front of a television set, and I almost always was in the theater. My ideas aren't the only ones, though. We've got Mr. Adam Morrow. He's an erudite musician. He has traveled the world playing music, been in the studio, read a lot of books, been to college himself. He's done college. And then we're going to have, as well, Donovan Ronwald. He's done college one time or two. And he's a media specialist. He has also taught some things in the college world. He's got encyclopedic knowledge on Orson Welles. And then we will often have Natalie Morrow with us. She is excellent when it comes to reality TV. She has also taught some things on the college level. I mean, my goodness. We're here to teach people. So from us, you'll get the obvious and the obscure, sometimes more of the other. Here are the co-hosts that are with me today and their hellos. First of all, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas for this guy. It's Mr. Adam Morrow.
Just heavy on the college today.
That hit me last week. I was like, wow, I think not only have all of us been to college, I mean, yeah, that's kind of where we met. We're all teachers in a way, or have been almost. I mean, even you.
Well, when I had a job between the full-time musicianship and leaving school where I was shepherding students around, and when I had that video production job. So yeah, I suppose we all do have a educational flair to what we're bringing to the table.
You had the editing production job and are a winner of, I went blank on your award. You officially won an award in your editing work. What was it?
I was a part of a project that won the regional Emmy.
Regional Emmy?
And it was not one
shit.
that I really had like a heavy hand in. I don't claim that one.
Yeah, no, claim it.
Which project?
That's not no.
That's a bona fide.
No, that's like my name was in the credits, not like a legitimate.
I mean, that's better than I've done.
That's better than I've ever done with my entire life.
If it had been for the you gentlemen will remember the Bankhead documentary, I would gladly claim that, but it was not. So,
but you worked on it.
Yeah, that's a small bit role.
There's shadows in this world.
Shadows in life, baby.
That's what it is.
There he is. You're hearing his voice talking to Adam. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. He's probably going to have to rake some snow off the ye old car tomorrow morning. It's Donovan Ronwald.
Thanks for having me, Blaine.
Oh, it's great to hear that voice.
Welcome sight.
And it is snowing here. It's snowing. I'm looking at the snow right now.
We've had a week of rain in Alabama. I think both Adam and I would take a little snow over this much rain.
You know, I was actually in New Orleans quite a bit this last week, and it was sunny and felt like 85 at one point. I know that sounds great to a lot of people in December, but give me this raininess.
The dreary rain and cool is kind of an Alabama December.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's colder in some ways with an Alabama December because it's wetter, and you get that cold that just gets into your bones.
A wet cold.
Whereas, like, with the dry cold, you can bundle up and be pretty comfy.
No Natalie today. You can search for Fireside Florence. She's doing a little work with one of her jobs.
The side hustle.
A side hustle job. Yep, it's America. We got side hustles. Fits perfectly with what we're going to talk about.
I was going to say, what a segue.
It would be a good segue.
Between college and the gig economy that we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, find them.
Setting up our film.
If you're in the North Alabama area, north of Decatur, west of Athens, find them, Fireside Florence, for holiday decor and holiday wrapping, those kinds of things.
Christmas lights.
Christmas lights. And
she'll wrap your house.
Adam, how far are you with Bono's book?
Not far enough to converse freely with you about the whole thing, but if you want to talk about the spirit of the book...
Yeah, I do.
Let's do it.
Both Adam and I read Bono's book. Of you two.
Bono.
And
Bono.
I know. I was going to see how long it would take.
Bono.
I've read his book.
Everybody brings a different version of that name to me to mess with me.
Yeah.
This is like a years-long multi-friend group thing because I am the guy.
No, yeah, you are the guy.
I will die on the hill of U2.
Even later, U2.
All of it.
I read his book in full. You're working through it.
It's getting on best of the year lists.
It's good.
Apparently, this is something I should look at too.
It's really good, but it came out within a week of Cormac McCarthy's
And Bob Dylan's.
first novel, and however many years. So I was trying to read those simultaneously, and then hit the. My brain can do not more than one fiction book, but a nonfiction and a fiction. Mm-hmm. I can balance that pretty well. Mm-hmm. And then hit Thanksgiving holiday stuff and just general now holiday busyness, and both of them have slowed to a bit of a crawl, but it's great. Blaine, I'm fascinated that I feel like you were about to say that you were maybe not the biggest U2 fan, not anti-U2 like some folks are, but so interested that you inhaled this book.
U2 was a part of my childhood. They were a staple on MTV. They were as regular as peas and okra in my house. So I took them for granted, I think is what it amounts to. I just thought they're popular rock music and they're going to be on TV whenever I want them to be, almost. To come across someone, and then I met you later in life, in college and later, someone who was a fan, fandom of them. I thought that was so interesting, and I was thinking, well, what have I missed? The truth of the matter is I took them for granted for years. And I started recounting, oh, I do love Sunday, Bloody Sunday. I do love Angels of Harlem. I do love Numb, one of my favorite songs they've ever done.
I love that you love Numb.
It's just badass.
Yeah.
I do love Elevation fairly well. Even you're talking about the later stuff, I went back and listened to it as I was reading the book because he brings these things up within the last 6-7 years of the songs that they've released, and some of those are pretty good too. I guess it was just a matter of them being almost like air in my house, to where I was just like, well, okay, everybody kind of knows U2. They're going to be on the radio. It's not anything to get excited about. And then he unpacking some of his lyrics, I had no idea that they were as spiritual as they were. I really got into the book and the music.
It's funny to me that you texted me about that. Didn't know that it was as spiritual as it was, when that was, maybe it's us being slightly younger and growing up in the church, the way that evangelical Christianity kind of did a certain form of music in the church starting in the late 90s.
You don't
2000s,
say.
That stole a lot of U2 sounds.
Yeah.
They didn't really want to hear anything other than it's like they biopsied out the 90s of U2's catalog. Everything up to Joshua Tree is good. Joshua Tree has the songs that are with or without you, what's he really talking about? Those kind of things. Still haven't found what I'm looking for is openly a gospel song.
Which I did not pick up on at 9 years old.
Well, it's that one, if you've ever seen the Rattle and Hum documentary, they explicitly say we were trying to write gospel music. Not necessarily, and I think they're approaching all of these themes in an un-American way. That some of these words don't have the same stigma attached to it that they do for us.
Beautifully so. And he explains this in his book as well.
So when they say we're writing a gospel song, even Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno are we love gospel. We love the tradition of gospel, especially coming out of the black church in America, or this old strain of whatever, spiritual songs from around the world, Irish folk music, all this stuff. So that's what they mean by that, more than we're trying to soundtrack a mega church, which
we're
now
trying to write a praise and worship song.
Right, now all that stuff, it's almost hijacked the 80s U2 guitar sound in a lot of ways. Now we're getting into really in the weeds of my brain of
no, this is why you're here.
Give me back the delay pedal.
And I called it spiritual. That was actually a wrong categorization. He's openly Christian. And that I would have assumed he was Christian, I suppose. I might have assumed that, but he makes no apologies about it. And it's kind of cool and refreshing to see Irish, or read about Irish Christian viewpoint when you've been inundated with evangelical American Christian.
Right. What he talks about growing up is very much a response to living in a violent country, where the threat of violence was real, where people are divided because of their religious choices or traditions, more traditions than choices. It's like that early group that he was a part of. It was pretty radical stuff. I do love that he in interviews and in the book says, somebody could stand on a table at a coffee shop and say, "I'm here to tell you about, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Is anyone interested?" And he would put his hand up like, "Yeah, I want to hear what you have to." Just a constant. I don't know, the impression that I have always had of him, and got even more from the book, and I'm curious if you would agree with, is somebody who is almost childlike in their wonder of the world, but in a really positive way, not naive, but like, I am, every day I wake up and I think the world is a heavy place, a painful place, but also a beautiful place with mystery left in it. And he seems to be attracted to that guy sitting on the coffee shop table telling you about our Lord and Savior, or exploring around the world, other people's tradition, all these kind of things that, I don't know, it's a fun worldview, because all those things shape the decisions they've made making music, and you can kind of live inside that feeling when you listen to their records, to me, or hear him interviewed.
I wonder if the tradition of Celtic, like Christianity and spirituality, has a lot to do with that kind of sense of the world as a place still of wonder and mystery, because
I think, yeah. That's
part of it, right?
Yeah, that there is mystery and something alive in the natural world. Say
yes.
That a pretty landscape is more than just visually pleasing. That there's something going on there with our connection to something greater than ourselves. There is a good part where he talks about Brian Eno and Lanois coming to make Under a Blood Red Sky. No, Unforgettable Fire. I'm sorry, Blood Red Sky was the live version. Coming to make Unforgettable Fire with them and bringing up all this traditional Irish music that they didn't know because they were trying to run away from. They're still in their early 20s then.
And Dylan does the same thing. When he talks to Dylan, he's like, "Don't you know so-and-so and so?" He's like, no. How do you know that?
And of course, Bob Dylan is reciting it by heart, knows every line of every verse, which is maybe his superpower.
It got to be.
One of his superpowers is that he sat and listened. Well, we're really in the weeds now, but that made me think of, they said he could hear somebody play a song once and then play it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't to do with how complicated the chords were. It's that he just had that mind that's immediately picking up, I remembered these stanzas of lines because my brain is in words at this point, which is fascinating. He apparently, is this in the book? This has always been like maybe a folktale version of events, that Dylan told Bono, people are going to listen to your songs for 100 years, but nobody's going to be able to play them.
That's not in the book, but you've told me that one. That's a great quote.
Yeah.
What is it? Apocryphal? What's the
apocryphal?
Word? Apocryphal. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's probably.
It maybe betrays the difference in these Irish guys trying to invent a new soundscape and world versus Dylan using and subverting traditional forms.
Mm-hmm.
It's like two different ways to approach creating art, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, he's got this wonderful, kind of beautiful quote where he says, "I don't want to hang around believers. I want to hang around the atheists because they're questioning things, and those are the people that are interesting to me."
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was great. And it's not quite like the Jesus hanging with the sinners. He's just more interested in, like, okay, what's your point of view?
He, in one interview, maybe he says it in the book, is that he takes his beliefs with him wherever, if I think they intentionally, and I haven't made it to the 90s yet in the book, but I'm very excited for when they are at the height of stardom. Like, I know he did things like he started smoking cigarettes because his voice was too pretty in his mind. He was trying to rough it up. And they kept talking about, you two needs to go down in the gutter a bit more and see what's happening there, and not just, I think they looked around and realized that they were accidentally on a soapbox at the end of the 80s and tried to dive off of it and into the mud. Mm-hmm. That line of like, I took my beliefs wherever I went was, I don't know, there's not a lot of people. He points out, he says, that cliche of like hiding the picture of the Pope or taking the crucifix down if you're going to do something, sin or whatever. He's like, no, this is all part of my experience. I'm living it. And that betrays a, I don't know, seeker mentality. I don't know. He's a fascinating guy.
What do you make of his writing style?
When the New Yorker had the sample piece that was mostly about his mother, Donovan, did you read that one?
Yeah.
Came out a few weeks before the book. I thought that was so beautifully written and painfully honest, and in a voice that, if a ghostwriter had anything to do with it, they were one of the best ever, because it's so uniquely his tone and cadence and everything.
He has a very conversational writing style where it feels like you're hearing something from a friend, like a really good friend who's telling you a story about something that's really important to them.
I think it was the Times who maybe knocked him for being a little repetitive, where you would say, I'm a seeker and I'm seeking, or something. He would do things like that.
Yeah,
and
totally.
And that can get, for me, as I've read the whole thing, that got just a little old, but not badly, because I still found the reading very enjoyable. And like Donovan said, distinctive.
It's his it sounds like, I mean, I don't know what he sounds like when he talks outside of interviews, but it sounds like somebody's talking to you.
Yeah.
It feels like somebody's having a conversation with you.
There are three musicians whom I've read fairly recently together, and it's him, Dylan, and Springsteen all write like they talk, and it's pretty cool to hear. But Springsteen even his book gets into almost like a rhythm of almost like a drum-like rhythm, which is really cool. If for nothing else, you should read it for the phrase "guck pants."
Yep. It was talking about his writing style, the choice. I'm so mindful as a super fan. Mm-hmm. I'll freely say super fan. They are my favorite group ever. Sometimes I wonder if I just like music because it's the thing that they did, and I was so attracted to it growing up. The detractors, I think often of the South Park episode that he's in. Where one of the kids Donovan's doing the dance of him going through Africa going, yeah. One of the kids even says, he seems like a really talented guy who seems to think of others and, people enjoy his art. Why does he seem like such a big piece of shit? So there's always that, there's this mountain of evidence that says, I should like this person, but for some reason I don't. A lot of people have problems with the band and him. And I was curious if the idea to write an autobiography, one, we don't usually overanalyze that, but that's a pretty egotistical choice, right? One, to write a book is a bit of an ego trip already, but to write it about yourself is certainly even more so. And then to structure it by your own songs and to quote your own songs in the chapters, I mean, that's just like catnip for somebody who wants to rag on the version of Bono who decided it was a good idea to give us all a U2 album on our phones without asking for it. You know what I mean?
Well, he recognizes that about himself, though.
Oh, yeah.
Often in the writing.
I think one of the things that people whiff on about U2 is that they're often in on the joke. Like their 90s music especially, they're laughing too. A song like Lemon, there's no way that he didn't go back into the control room after singing all that falsetto and they weren't all just falling down laughing. I don't think they take themselves as seriously as people think they do, or they're more self-aware than they get credit for.
They're kind of like David Lynch in that way, right? Where he knows it's funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And people think that he's more somber and serious, but it's like, no, he knows when he's being funny.
Yeah. I mean, for him, Lynch to choose to play the mostly deaf detective in Twin Peaks and just scream his line. I mean, these are intentional choices.
That's comedy, and people think of him as more serious and grotesque, and you two would have to be in on the joke on some of these, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Totally.
It's a good read.
It's making year-end best of lists. Do you think the kids at my school will read it? I honestly don't know if they will or not. I've been considering trying to see if we can get it.
I can't remember if this was in our text thread or just Adam and I going back and forth, but I spent a day with my classes where at the beginning of the class I asked them how many of them had heard of U2, and I made them raise their hand.
How'd they do?
The first period did not do well, and it made me feel...
The first period, zero raised their hands.
Really?
Zero. But the next period and two more after that, a lot of them did.
That's funny because you talked about you two being like breathing. This is a total side note, but like my dad he's not a huge music fan. Like his favorite music is like the Beatles, and he also likes some classical music. Like he likes Vivaldi, but he's not like a go out and seek out music. So he had like 3 CDs that have always stuck out with me because he had a very small CD collection. One was a Cranberries album, I forget which one. One was The Cure's Wild Mood Swing, which like for whatever reason he had that, and one was Rattle and Hum. He had the whole Rattle and Hum, the CD with all the songs from that documentary. And that's like for someone who is not that into music to just end up with this CD, that's like U2 is like breathing.
Yeah.
They're just there.
He only liked UK bands and Irish bands, right?
I guess so.
Something like
I
that.
don't know.
enough.
He liked Vivaldi. That's Italian.
Yeah. European bands. We could talk about Avatar 2.
Is anyone going to see it?
But no, none of us
No.
dare
Hard
walk into a
pass.
theater.
I'm fascinated with the behind-the-scenes stuff of this, just like how long James Cameron has been working on it, and the fact that he is able to cajole
Yeah.
or con a major
Yeah.
movie studio into supporting him yet again in this wild, insane passion project.
Is this one supposed to be 3D, knock you out, weird, putting on the glasses? Or because that was the allure to the first one.
The first one just gave me a headache.
Okay, I can see that.
From the 3D glasses thing.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, if I watch a movie in 3D.
Yeah, that's the
I get a
only reason I
headache.
went to see it, was because there was this hoopla about
Seeing the spectacle of it.
it was the spectacle, and then I immediately forgot the movie afterward.
It has some cool parts. It's got giant robots in it, right?
I guess, did it? I don't know.
Yeah, you remember at the end, the big fight, right? Like the Avatar people, I don't remember what they're called.
Navi.
The Navi are bigger than humans.
Yeah, they are. They're cats.
So the final fight is Jake. Is that the protagonist?
Do you know? I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's Jake in his Avatar body fighting the bad guy Colonel, who's in kind of a giant rope, kind of like in the end of Aliens where Ripley gets in the walker. He's in kind of like a walker thing like that. Yeah. And that was cool, but there's a whole lot of movie before that.
A lot.
Just a lot.
There's a lot of movie before that.
But this does take me, because it is so heavily reliant on, or reliant maybe, similar to Dances with Wolves, it takes me back to 1990. My friend of mine and I got dropped off at the theater, which was common in 1990. You did this with your kids.
Yeah.
We were 14, and we get dropped off to see Kindergarten Cop because we're 14. And this is going to be a laugh riot. It looked funny. We go in, sit down, Kindergarten Cop. Yes. My buddy says to me, I'm going to go get some popcorn. And I say, okay, I'll hold our seats. But even though it wasn't that crowded, he goes and he goes and he's gone and he's gone and he's gone. And I'm thinking, he's been kidnapped. And I am stuck in this theater. Do I just watch the movie and then find him? Or do I go find him now? No, he's just in the bathroom. But no, it's a long time. Pre-cell phones, and the movie starts, and I'm like, God damn, he's going to miss the fucking movie. The trailers roll. Nothing's unusual. And then the opening screen, the black screen, the opening of the movie pops up, and it says, Dances with Wolves. I'm like, shit, I'm in the wrong fucking movie. And I had to get up and go next door, and Kindergarten Cop was sold out. I'm not kidding you, sold out. I had to sit in the corner seat on the bottom, and there was no other seat. And I had to find him afterward, because when he came back, he went to the right theater, you see. But I did get to see Kindergarten Cop in the theater, and months later, I saw Dances with Wolves at home, and it was good.
Do you watch it on? You watched it on VHS?
Yeah, 2 VHS. You had to do the 2.
That's how I watched it too. And so the first time I watched it, I was still a teenager, and like my little brothers were watching. Like my whole family was watching this for some reason. And at the sexy part, my mother and father had both forgotten that there was going to be some butts in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
So one of my formative memories is my father standing and holding a pillow in front of our TV screen until the scene is
Fantastic.
That's good.
Blaine, I like that you sacrificed the cinematic experience of Dances with Wolves on the big screen so that you could watch that spectacle Kindergarten Cop instead.
You had a laugh
really,
riot.
But you flipped which one am I going to catch on TV? Oh, Dances with Wolves. That'll be fine. And it comes on one Sunday afternoon.
The Oscar-winning Dances
screen.
with Wolves. Well, I was 14.
Kindergarten Cop. I need it to be 20 feet tall, not the American West.
Yeah. And then fast forward, Dances with Wolves I end up loving.
I'm fascinated with this because I found Dances with Wolves overlong, self-serious.
Oh, it is.
And all that kind of stuff. But you said, what is it? You said the grandeur and spectacle of it still hold up?
Maybe. Now, I haven't watched it in a few years, but I remember, I think at 14, that was maybe subconsciously a moment where I put together that setting, cinematography, score, maybe even narration can all work cohesively to create a film. I don't know that I realized it was more than just the actors that was in it. Obviously, I was watching Kindergarten Cop.
Well, he's going to try to downplay his Kindergarten Cop tattoo now.
It says it's not a tumor on the...
Turns out it very much was.
It feels like we should be covering Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, Doc. That's getting a lot of talk, but instead we're discussing something else that's buzzy. Go ahead, Donovan.
I read the New York Times article about it, and I feel fine.
Okay, yeah, I think I would too.
Natalie's watched it. I wish she was not at work right now.
It?
She did. Apparently, they're doing like a 3-3. Really, I think that's right, 3-3. She's watched what's available as of now. More comes out this week. But we're interested. You know, we're fans of The Crown, not the institution, but the program.
The colonialism.
Monarchist Adam over here.
Yeah. And she indicated to me, this is bad to review secondhand like this, but she said it had some of the themes that maybe are also in The Crown, like, you know, their relationship with the media and how you have to balance that and family, all that kind of stuff. That kind of turns these mega wealthy people into sympathetic characters at times. I don't know. I'd watch it.
I was going to say it's getting a lot of attention online, it seems. But so is this, the movie we're going to cover, Emily the Criminal. Netflix release. Donovan, who directed this? It's his first time directing. John Patton Watson, am I right about that?
I looked it up because I knew I was going to forget it. It is John Patton Ford.
John Patton Ford, thank you.
His directorial debut.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a really good debut. So in general, before we talk spoilers, if you hadn't seen it, that's it. You know, it's pretty good, right? Really entertaining.
I'd give it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
I'd give it a B+ to an A-, which is definitely a watch.
Whoa.
I'd go B- to B.
Yeah, same.
Oh, wow.
I'd go straight
okay.
B. Straight B. Real
Interesting.
good, though.
Mine is B+ to A-.
I'm a harsh grader.
Maybe I just like Aubrey Plaza.
Yeah, let's unpack the spoilers here. Aubrey Plaza, starring with Theo Rossi, I think his name is. Well, I know that's his name if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And that's mainly your two characters. That's about it. It kind of sticks with those two. Overview, you're made aware quite quickly. She's got a lot of student debt. She's looking for a better job. She's working in the service industry, kind of a Grubhub kind of job. Take the food, go cater it for people. Usually lunch kind of big company kind of thing. I would say it borders on kind of miserable, but definitely not a money-making sort of gig.
And kind of miserable.
And kind of miserable.
You're standing, or, you know, people in suits are in the background watching you set up their lunch.
It's definitely made out to look miserable.
I thought Donovan, what you just said, the juxtaposition that they keep doing where she's looking through the boardroom glass at people roughly her age who are ostensibly doing better than her. That was my problem with it, which we don't have to get into at the moment. It can be a little heavy-handed, and I thought those moments were great. Others kind of felt like the anti-work subreddit had pinned the film.
No, we did not shy away from the point it wanted to make. It was not subtle, but that's okay, I think, for the kind of movie it was, which ended up being kind of a thriller in the... I'm sorry.
And I agree that it's not subtle, but I thought that it did a good job of not being preachy.
Yeah.
That its themes are woven in with its, like, as part of its set pieces, you know?
She's not supposed to be Robin Hood. You know what I
Right.
mean? It didn't. I think me and Natalie talked about it this morning, and I'll steal one of the things she told me. She said she enjoyed seeing. It was kind of an action film in a lot of ways.
It had
but
moments of it.
Seeing something like that where the person doesn't spend 2/3 of the movie wrestling with criminality. Aubrey Plaza's character kind of just took to it and realized she was really good at it, and away she goes.
There's a moment where it kind of is like the movie is letting her be who she really was all along. Sorry, not the movie. What her actions during the movie? Because there's that bit where she goes. One of the reasons she can't get a job is because she has a felony conviction for aggravated assault.
Yeah.
And she says,
I was going to bring up this line. Yeah.
My problem is I didn't go far enough. If I'd gone further, he would have been too scared to call the police.
Yeah, that was intense.
And just the way she, I think it was Sheila O'Malley of RogerEbert.com pointed out that she's always, like, throughout, she's action oriented. She doesn't have to think, she just does.
And the slow reveal of the whole movie kind of mirrors that early job interview where she says, well, I got a DUI. I was the least drunk of my drunk friends. Blah, comes up with this story that's easily forgiven in white collar world. And the guy releases that says, I have this information, that slow trickle of like her version of events through the film as she becomes more and more at peace with her action impulses. That was well done, I thought.
Yeah, a big part of this movie that's good, I think, is that she is allowed to do things that you usually see males doing in movies.
Yeah.
Like, she can be the anti-hero. She can be a little bit mean, but also likable, and you're pulling for her. Why not? And having Aubrey Plaza in that role works perfectly. I was questioning often, not in a negative way, I just kept thinking, what if you put someone else in that role? Someone who's got a much less caustic view, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Less sarcastic kind of way approach through a lot of their work. It's a different movie, of course, but this one works well too.
It subverts our expectation of her too.
Yeah.
Because she is such a, if you've seen her in anything, she presents as this sarcastic kind of, April Ludgate will follow her forever.
Mm-hmm.
And she plays those roles a lot because she's really funny and has this deadpan kind of thing. But it's like, if all of those characters, she's not really that sarcastic in this one.
No, she's not. She's not. She plays it differently.
At all. And it's, what if April Ludgate, when she jokes about killing somebody, really would, like without a joke, tase someone and wrestle her money back kind of thing. Constantly like, oh, this is her crossing the line that's always been a joke to her in the past.
Aubrey Plaza is, I think, a really interesting actor because she has, I think, pretty consciously sought to... I read some comparison that compared her to Kristen Wiig, where she's kind of tried to go beyond just that funny, sarcastic girl personality, and she's looking for roles that kind of stretch what you can imagine her doing and what you can imagine her being. And I thought that I thought she was great. So much of the movie is centered on her. The camera is often like right up close next to her. Mm-hmm. So she really has to carry the movie, and I thought she did it with aplomb.
We talked about it before, even pressing play on the movie last night. I haven't read into it. There has to be some awareness, some strategy now that when someone's going to do something that's an actor is going to be involved in something that's kind of prestigious, like she's in White Lotus right now, and people are talking about it week to week, this movie coming out the week of the finale of White Lotus, that can't be an accident.
Nah.
But she plays a pretty serious character in White Lotus. I don't know, have y'all watched any of season 2 yet?
I have not.
Woefully behind.
But it's playing still inside the violence, the criminality, all that stuff of Emily is well beyond outside what you would expect. The White Lotus character is still like a stretch for Aubrey Plaza's past characters, but one that you can imagine, whereas this one is a total reinvention, subversion, blah, blah, blah.
I felt like I was a little primed for this one, just because I thought she was so fantastic in Legion. Mm-hmm. Did either of you ever watch Legion?
I watched the first season.
The first season's definitely worth it. Yeah, and she kind of has to. So it's more like that character is a signpost on the road to this character, but it was just her playing against just being that funny, sarcastic girl type.
Mm-hmm.
This one was kind of like, I kept remembering some stuff from what I thought was really a breakout moment for her in Legion. And it was when she showed to me that she could do this.
She did an interesting choice. Maybe it was the direction, or maybe it was her, but either way, she pulls it off. Did you notice how when she got nervous or afraid, which those two things can be very intertwined, she would put on, or her New Jersey accent would come out more, the character's New Jersey. I just love that. That was a nice little bit. So it does these nice little things while also being just a fairly straightforward kind of criminal thriller. I mean, like Adam said, it hits its obvious beats, and there are no shocking twists or surprises. It just does kind of what it's supposed to do. At times on the nose, at times not.
It's sort of a nasty little neo-noir.
Yeah, it is.
When you get right down to it. And so if you like noir, you like that kind of crime films in that vein, I think you'll really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And I agree with Adam. Like, there's never a big twist or a big reveal. It's not a mystery film.
Mm-mm.
It's much more interested in its characters and seeing how far they'll go.
Were any of you reminded of Heat, the Michael Mann film?
I've never seen Heat.
I really was. I thought about that movie a lot. Heat is kind of...
That's the one with the famous confrontation, right?
Yeah, with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro.
And De Niro, yeah.
Heat is kind of the scholarly take on a very similar idea, but this one was good. It got to the point. It didn't waste time, which I appreciated a lot.
Yeah.
She never is the underdog, which I found, except when it came to the student loan stuff or the job stuff. The Americanization of her life is the only time she's really an underdog. Even when the guy comes in and, with the help of a girl, steals from her, she immediately flips that, and she's like, "No, I'm not taking that shit." And she goes and almost beats the shit out of him, tases him, or whatever you call those kinds of things.
That was maybe the only twist in the movie. Mm-hmm. I thought that there was going to be a bit of a hero's journey, redemption journey, maybe, to get the dog back.
Oh, yeah.
There's clearly a choice that has to happen there with, like, I'm either going to fly right or let's go deeper into this world that I'm going into. And that was still when we can talk about the job being dangled out in front of her for most of the film.
Yeah.
There's still like some straight-laced options for her potentially down the road, and her immediately choosing, no, I'm going to get this taser and chase this car down.
Yeah.
For it to happen, again, like y'all said, she's a person of action. There was no thought. She didn't lick her wounds, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't push her back into a more straight-ahead path. She just went for it, because that's who she always was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That scene and the car scene where she has to basically steal the car are two nice moments of tension. They're not ramped up in any sort of way that's like cinematic masterpieces, but they do ratchet up nice little tension where if you're sitting at home and watching this, which is where you'd watch it, you get on the edge of your seat a little.
I think it was, I know it was Sheila O'Malley from RogerEbert.com. I really like RogerEbert.com's reviews, and they're stable of reviewers, so I'll often cite them.
We get it.
So she actually compared it to the nervous adrenaline of the Safdie brothers' Good Time, which I kind of see. Mm-hmm. It's got that kind of like can't sit still. Mm-hmm. Every moment is anxious feeling.
That's so interesting, because my other comparison I was going to make it to Heat and Uncut Gems.
I was going to bring up Uncut Gems next.
Yeah.
Because
perfect example.
It feels like it just kind of like sits on your chest and doesn't stand up for 90 minutes.
Did you like Uncut Gems but wish the tension was ramped down just a notch? Okay, Emily the Criminal's your movie.
How good is the chemistry between her and her co-star too, whose name I have to look up really
quickly. It's
Theo Rossi.
Theo Rossi, probably Theo Rossi. I love that guy. I don't know if either of you watched Luke Cage, but he played one of the baddies who sometimes did a good thing every now and again.
Oh, I watched the first season of Luke Cage.
He's so good. Here's why you may not recognize him, and it's a credit to him. In that movie, he was a New Yorker and kind of had a little bit of a New Yorker accent. In this movie, he's Lebanese and has a thick Lebanese accent. The guy was born and raised in New York.
I thought that the way they played off. It was really interesting because he seems, he kind of is. If Aubrey Plaza's characters can ever be a stand-in for the audience, he kind of makes you trust him, and he seems kind and that kind of stuff. And then just the chemistry between the two of them. There's a universe where this movie took a sharp left turn and became a romantic thriller instead of what it ended up being, where she leaves him, which I thought was a great moment.
Their chemistry really made up for how fast they connected.
Yes.
The two actors made up for that.
I would definitely agree with that.
Theo Rossi was apparently on Sons of Anarchy as a Latino man, if I'm not mistaken. So he can do it. I want to see him in a few more things. He tends to stick to the criminal or the bad guy who may or may not be 100% bad. Maybe we can wind down, but I will say one of the most fascinating things about this movie, I don't think there was ever a gun.
I think you're right.
Except for when Theo Rossi's character gets hit over the head and gives him the concussion that's causing the issues in the last few scenes. He might have been hit over the head with a gun, but I don't.
Was that a gun?
I don't know.
I thought it was just like a blackjack,
a bottle, or a rock.
I love that choice. Make a movie about criminals without using a gun.
Yeah, we had tasers, pepper spray, box cutters,
fists,
but
fist-ish, yeah, kicking. Anyway,
never a gun.
Yeah,
that is pretty.
That alone is kind of a cool thing. If you want to watch a crime movie without a gun, this is interesting.
If you're pro-crime and violence but anti-gun,
anti-capitalistic shitting on people. Yeah, that's
that too.
Yeah, good movie. If you made it this far, you probably have watched it anyway. Let us know what you think. We liked it. I really enjoyed just having it for a Saturday night, sit at home, watch. Yeah,
it was 96 minutes. It didn't overstay its welcome. It was really, it was tight and taut.
Yeah,
and
even if the love thing felt a little rushed, would she really fall for that guy? It may be. I don't know. She's got questionable morals.
I was going to say she doesn't have a history of making the best decisions.
Her scruples are not. Yeah. Okay, Donovan, let's take a quick break, but you stick around with me, and I want to wrap some thoughts on the English.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. We'll bid Adam adieu. Thanks.
Yeah, man.
So, just a few really quick thoughts about the English because I wrapped it over the weekend.
So you finished it?
Done.
Okay.
I was moved.
Yeah. It's good, right?
I kept hearing your voice saying it's convoluted, and I agree with that. I don't know if convoluted would be the adjective I would use.
Well, there's the stuff with, like, maybe convoluted's not right, but there's the stuff with, like, kills on water, which kind of seems to go nowhere. The stuff with Black Mog seems like it's set up for more.
Yeah.
Even though it was a great little cameo and a great scene with Emily Blunt and Black Mog.
I tell you what happened is that felt like I missed an episode. When she was sitting in front of Black Mog, I felt like there's an episode in between this that could have happened.
That's a good way to put it, because I felt like it's either trim the fat, just trim a little bit. It has a tight 2 to start, and honestly, I think the last 2 are pretty tight too.
If you made it this far, people, we're going to spoil all of it, so don't listen any further. If any of this is sounding new to you, you haven't watched that far.
It's worth. It's only 6 eps. I'd say it's worth watching, because even the 2 in the middle. And I'm influenced by reviews here, I think, but I would agree that those are the creakiest. Maybe they're a little overstuffed and they're trying to do too much. It's not ever not entertaining.
No, or pretty to look at, or
gorgeous to look at.
To use a cliche, it just kind of sucks you in. You just it's slow, but you never look at your phone or your watch because you feel there somehow.
Most of their performances really suck you into. I'm not sure about, now I've forgotten, I could have told you last week, but the rancher, I'm not sure about his storyline, if that really goes anywhere or is worth it. But like,
do you mean her fiance or her?
Well, he never, she turned him down.
Thomas.
So Thomas
with it, and his last name starts with a T because that plays a role.
I thought that, especially as they build up who the big bad is, that kind of sucks you into. Rafe, is it Rafe Spall? It is Rafe Spall who plays David Melmont.
And he creates the Melmont General Hardware.
I read an interview with him where he was talking about his performance, He said that kind of one of the ideas and inspiration was that he was a kind of Colonel Kurtz-like figure, that he's at the end of this, he's at the center of this web of violence and darkness that leads to him. And this is my interpreting, but I think that he kind of shows himself to be, in some ways, the man that the country creates.
Yes, but that's this very similar read I had on him, was that I'm tired of being lesser than. I'm tired of being on the low end of the social ladder in England, and I don't have to do that over here. So fuck you, Thomas. I'm going to ruin you.
Yeah.
In every way possible.
And he did.
And he did. As far as Emily Blunt's character, he raped her.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that at first.
I was going to say that was kind of hard to pick up on until you watched a couple episodes later. But the sad thing is that I assumed that's what happened when that episode ended, and she was pregnant. I was trying to do the math, and I was thinking, Thomas would not have... I don't think the timeline fit for Thomas to have been the father when it shows her pregnant.
Right, because he's over in America. Mm-hmm. It was not... Game of Thrones took a lot of heat, for deservedly so, for its depiction of sexual assault. I'll say that I felt like... This is something I really have no business talking about, but I felt like they did a pretty good job here.
You wonder
not
if
sensationalizing it.
Yeah, you wonder if they chose not to sensationalize it, or they chose to use it as a plot point of mystery, or both.
Yeah.
Maybe it's both.
How much did you... How surprised were you when so much of the last episode revolved around who has syphilis?
I did not see the syphilitic plot point coming. That was that's the major thing.
I did like this about the English, like when Emily Blunt's character and Chas Whips, Chas Spencer, Eli Whip.
That's right.
Finally kiss, and I felt like that moment was built too nicely. She says, "I can't," and runs away, and then the next two episodes show you why. And I really liked, and a couple of times I felt like the English did this, where they gave you something, and then they made you look and think about it a different way. Yeah.
I was a little worried when it showed another supposedly syphilitic woman, and then the camera, the edit bleeds into Emily Blunt's character. I was like, oh no, they're doing a timeline thing, and I don't know if this is the kind of story that really needs we really weren't in that timeline kind of Reddit figure it out Westworld thing.
Ugh.
Yeah. Well, but it turns out
and fortunately, that's not what
happens. And I saw a lot of people on message boards saying that it was a bit confusing, but I feel like it was not confusing. I feel like it just required a little thought, and I don't mean that in an insulting way. Like every time I sat down and watch it, I would mentally put everything kind of where it was in my head, and that seemed to be the case. It didn't trick me. Everything was like, okay, so that is what happened. Okay, I'm with.
Even though I basically binged it, I always watch the episode recaps.
Oh yeah, those are helpful too.
I found that very helpful, just to remember where all our pieces were, because it does do a little bit of like, we're in the present, we're in the past. Melmont is first introduced as a store name. We don't even hear his name spoken.
Oh, right.
So there's a little bit of, you do have to be, or at least I found that I had to be paying attention.
You have to pay attention. But it's the kind of show where you do pay attention, because I'm looking at every pixel in the frame.
How great were some of the set pieces, too? Like when they're running from the man with the buffalo gun.
Beautiful. Amazing and intense.
It was, edge of your seat, literally edge of your seat stuff.
Uh-huh.
Or when they finally confront Melmont, and everybody gets a chance to act and act and act.
In a good way.
Yeah, Rafe Spall chews up the scenery.
Yeah.
Emily Blunt is perfect. Chas Spencer,
wow.
His performance is so understated, but he's doing so much with it.
I've got good news, bad news for him. We talked about him last week. As it turns out, I found out this week, he is going to be a regular in the upcoming MCU Disney Plus show, Echo. Good news is we're going to see a lot of him. Bad news is I don't know if he's going to get sucked into the MCU machine.
Yeah, that is kind of bad news because I would like to see him kind of flex and stretch himself a little bit after, because I felt like that's what he was doing here.
Me too.
And it was great.
I assume, it did a little nice trickery, not the mind game kind of trickery, where I assumed he was going to be the one who would die and she would go back to England without him.
Yeah.
But instead, she's kind of dying.
Yeah.
And he just chooses.
He has to go to Nebraska.
Did you feel like that was a reasonable choice for his character, though? Like, just to say, no, I'm going to Nebraska now. What?
Yes.
Okay, tell me, because that part I didn't quite buy, and I'll tell you another gripe in a second.
It's just because it was so foundational to his character.
Okay.
That he wants to, and it ends up with, at the end of it, both of them have to go home. And she has to go home to England, where she belongs.
Yeah.
And he has to go back to where he may or may not belong anymore. So I found it kind of elegiac, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does.
It's a little bit of riding off into the sunset. Come back, Shane, right? But it worked for me.
Okay. I didn't have a huge complaint about it. You talked last week with the maybe over complexity or over storylines that have gotten dropped. What it felt like to me was that Hugo Blick, the writer and director, maybe had written out a few more things and decided once he started filming that they weren't as important or working as well as he thought they might on the page. That's what it felt like to me.
So then it kind of results with it being some of these things feeling a little abortive, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially Kills on Water he's mostly there to set up the flashback,
Yeah.
but they made him seem like he was this big important character.
Yeah,
he doesn't really do a lot.
I think they could have done the flashback without him.
I think they could have.
The black-eyed Mog, I don't know that she was pivotal.
No, she was fun, and her and Emily Blunt confronting each other was fun. Mm-hmm. But kind of stepping back and looking at it holistically. Mm-hmm. How about the moment when we see? How about when we revelation? Because I thought it totally worked. Where we figure out why she's after the man who killed her child, and that he lived to 14, and then we finally see the picture of him.
Yeah, a little playful use of the word "killed."
Yeah,
I don't know. Well, maybe they never phrased it like that. Maybe it's just me as a viewer thinking "killed."
I think she said at some point she's going for the man who killed her son.
Okay, yeah. In the first episode, it seemed like she did.
In the first episode, did that work for you?
It was okay. The surprise works. The fact that the poor little guy was eat up with syphilis and kind of scary looking. That was interesting, but they might have done it just a little too much with the word "kill." Maybe just should have said responsible for the death of my, something like that would have been as equally as interesting. Like, well, how was he responsible? So They had a little leeway with the word usage, the diction there. But man, this show was so, I kept thinking it's the word flawed masterpiece. We talk about that a lot with albums.
Yeah.
It's a pretty flawed masterpiece. It's a pretty flawed piece of television. But good.
I think I would agree with that, where it's you watch it and its flaws are so obvious that they're almost not worth pointing out.
Exactly. Yeah.
But because the end result is so good that it almost feels like you're throwing stones at the moon to start pointing out every time that it stumbled a little bit. And it's kind of like the stumbles it had were a little bit like you're swinging big.
Yeah. I think so.
You're going big, and if I'd rather watch you stumble going big than playing it safe.
Yeah,
and
I often have written about pieces of television and movies that stumble big, and I hate them. But I appreciate the effort. But this one I didn't hate.
This one was, I think you called it captivating, and I also found it captivating. Like I found myself. When I started, I looked at some reviews and I thought, oh, it's getting mixed reviews. This looks okay. And then I started watching it and it just sucked me in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
it does.
And all 6 episodes sucked me in.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, when they are on Emily Blunt and Chas Spencer's characters,
yeah,
pretty much every scene that those two are in together is a winner.
Mm-hmm.
The writing's good. The acting, they have really, really great chemistry together.
It does drop a few of its quirks. Do you remember that first episode, how Kieran Hines was so oddly devilish, and then you had the guy dancing with her dress on the porch? Like,
Yes.
some of that, it was almost Lynchian, but it was dropped a little here and there, and then it resurrected a little here and there. A little bit more straightforward, kind of bad or evil.
I don't know. I felt like they kept, this is going back to Rafe Spall, but like the moment when he's covered in blood
Yeah, right, and
he's
growling.
barking like a dog,
Yeah.
growling and barking. It kind of kept that kind of quirkiness going, I thought.
I don't know of another, this is a cliche, of course, second one of the episode, but I don't know if I have seen television as cinematic with its photography and its score. Like, when the score would come up, I would think, damn, that's like a movie.
The camera, I think it was a camera woman, actually. The camera work was so darn good. I wish I'd seen it on a big screen.
Would have been nice. And fitting.
It had that kind of, we were kind of joking earlier about like the grand sweep and grandeur from Dances with Wolves, but I really felt like this one had, sometimes it would have scenes where they were in the wilderness or whatever, and they were the only two people there, and it just felt grand. And I guess they were filming in Spain for this movie, so wherever they found in Spain is a very nice stand-in for the American West. Cause,
it is.
The show looks great, and I was even, I brought up the set piece of kind of action scene of the guy with the buffalo gun. I would have loved to have seen that on the big screen, because it's so edge of your seat exciting.
Yeah. Then you often get these shots of them riding toward one another or away from something on horses from very far away, and the color palette is just amazing. It's to die for.
It reminded me a little, and I think it was Roger Deakins. I said this last week, but it reminded me a little of the Coen's True Grit.
Oh, yeah,
which
that's right.
I believe Roger Deakins was the cinematographer for. I could see echoes of that in this, and it was that's a pretty high compliment for me, because I think True Grit is a pretty darn well shot movie.
It is well shot. There we go. I just had to get a few more thoughts out on the English because of its wonderful but flawed way of hooking me. So that's it. We're done for this week. There's more online. It's the end of the year. We'll get some end of year list and thoughts going on the site, thealabamatate.com. You can find us, just us, Taking It Down Pod on Twitter and Instagram. The home base for all operations is thealabamatate.com or any of social media sites for the Alabama Take. Let us know your thoughts, and we'll talk to everybody next week.